going in and doing that tour has definitely brought out a lot of experiences with making that record and how like free we were at that time. Because I feel like we were grouped into like this category with these other bands with our first record, and then we did this second album, and it was like very different compared to what everybody else was doing. And I feel like this new album with Will is kind of like a nod to that as well. Like there's a lot of bands in the scene that are doing a sound and they do it very well. And I think that we are kind of like going like, who are we as a band and who are we as a band now and what do we want to sound like?
When did you decide that this was your kind of next move and what you wanted to do? When did this kind of come together?
So I've been wanting to do like another project for a while just because I feel like with Sleeping with Sirens, it's like you have a voice in it and it's like you have to say a specific thing. And I felt like I had so many other things to say that I wanted to do with a different project. And I was kicking around different producers and randomly saw that Aaron Marsh had like a new studio that he had built. And I was just like, that's the guy. Like, I've been a fan of Copeland forever. And he sang on one of our songs on our first record. And it's just been like, I've been wanting to work with him, since then. So I just hit him up and I was asking like, when's your availability? And he said he had some time open and we just kind of locked it in and went for it. So.
Nice. I mean, obviously you say, there'd been a feature before. Like, how well did you actually kind of know each other? Was this like kind of the first bigger collaboration in that way, or do you have a good kind of friendship, working relationship before this?
We've like bumped into each other a few times and we've like stayed in communication, but like never have really worked on like a song together in a studio capacity. So it's like when we did our song together for my first record with Sirens, it was just kind of like I sent him the track and he did it from where he was at and sent it back to me. So I'd never actually worked with him in that space before, but it was like super easy. It was probably one of the easiest records I've ever made. Like
Wow.
we went in together and we started, I think we did like two travel sessions where I went to his studio for 2 weeks and we got like 6 songs the first time and then we got all the rest the next. And literally I would go in there and I brought like a ton of lyrics with me. I just wrote a bunch of obscure stuff and somehow they ended up kind of like molding into this thing. And it really is just kind of like a love letter to my wife. And it's just like a bunch of really cool soundscapes that Aaron makes. Like he's just a genius. Like
Mm.
he'll start with a bass line and then like go over to a synth and start making like really weird sounds and then bring in his guitar and stuff. And so just watching him play all these songs and being a part of it was awesome. So
Yeah, what is it about this project then? Do you think that it's because obviously you are exploring slightly new territory and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just interested in terms of that creative process. How does it differ from your approach to Sirens? Obviously, different people in the room for a start, but for
yeah.
you, is like your songwriting process always kind of the same? Do you always start at the same place, or did this feel really quite a different process?
Yeah, because I think like with Siren stuff, it's mostly just like, well, it was like Jack in the band at the time, he would bring in music and then I would kind of like write to his stuff. And so Sirens is actually like in a different capacity this time too, because we don't have Jack in the band anymore and we have Tony in the band now. So we're like all in a room together like we were back in the day making music. But for this one, I wrote just a bunch of lyrics and I had like a bunch of different words and things like that in my mind that I just put in a notebook. I filled up a notebook full of stuff and just brought them to Aaron and we kind of created the music around the words, which is like a different experience for me. Started with words first and then music second. So
Wow, interesting. No, interesting approach there to kind of mix it up, and especially this far into your career, it's got to be nice to have, if nothing else, a kind of new challenge, I suppose. It is definitely, it feels like a new challenge to be able to approach something in a very different way like that.
it was really freeing though, because like I think like when you have a band that you've been involved in for like 15 years and there's like sort of this expectation of what it's supposed to sound like, it kind of puts you in a box per se.
Mm.
Although this new record that we're making with Sirens is definitely a very freeing experience too because um, we're just like kind of throwing all those preconceived like notions out the window. Obviously, it still sounds like Sirens, but it's like I think we're kind of tired of being put in that box, really. And so like with this project with Aaron, it was like again, it was the easiest album to write because I
Mm.
didn't have to like worry about sounding like Sirens. I could just sound like whatever I wanted to sound like. So it was pretty
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, very cool. I do want to mention the title as well. I'm sure it's an obvious question, but you could have very easily just called this a Kellin Quinn record. But why did you
Yeah.
decide, okay, Haunted Mouths, we want to do something a little bit different? Why that title? And also tell me about that decision of not wanting to necessarily go under the Kellin Quinn moniker.
Yeah, I think that doing like all of the artists that I look up to that have done like side projects, I feel like have given it like a different name. And I feel like if you just go out as Callan Quinn, it's almost like you're in a boy band and now you're solo singer pop singer thing. So I wanted to give it like its own project name. Plus I felt like Aaron being like 50% of this project deserved to give it like a whole new thing. So like the new video we just shot, I was like, dude, you got to be in the video. Like we did some promo photos where he's a part of the photos because I want it to be like a band, you know? I don't want it to be like a solo project thing. So,
Yeah,
and Haunted Mounds
interesting.
is actually like the name actually came from this cemetery that me and my friends used to like frequent in Michigan when we were younger. It was called Mouth Cemetery, and it was just like in the middle of nowhere. We would go there on the weekends because there was nothing to do and bring our friends, and it was like just something to do. So I named my project that as well.
Yeah, that's a cool title, though. It definitely is
Yeah.
very evocative. I think it fits very nicely to what you're trying to do here. It's interesting you say approaching it from the band perspective there as well, because I guess that begs the question of where this kind of goes. It's the nice thing about the era we live in that, you have these opportunities where you can do your Sirens thing on one hand and then you can dip off to whatever you want to do on the side as well. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But do you feel like this will be something where it becomes more of a fully fledged outfit? Do you see more releases coming? Do you see live shows maybe? How do you see the approach for the future with this?
I would definitely love to do some live shows with it, like some special like shows to see how they do. I think that there's so much cool instrumentation that goes on with this. Like I'm definitely like getting more comfortable playing the guitar and wanting to do that on stage as well as like playing some other instruments and stuff as well. So I think that there could definitely be some live shows in the future as far as like a new project. I'm not sure just because I feel like this is such like a one-off thing and I feel like all the songs kind of like coordinated and I said everything that I wanted to say with it. So we'll see. But definitely would love to play some live shows.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see you kind of do that and approach it in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
And speaking of live, I'm glad we got a chance to catch up because, of course, the last kind of Sirens thing we saw for you was the anniversary tour. You did the Let's Cheers to This tour out there in the States. And I always find it really interesting when bands go back and approach something like that because you guys have changed so much. Like, you'll have learned
Yeah.
so much over the years since that record came out. So what was that experience like for you actually getting stuck in that world again? Did you discover anything new for the first time or anything like that? Just going back into that world a little bit more?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience because I feel like our earlier albums are so like obscure with like the songs that we put on there. Like I don't think that we've ever played like Your Nickel Ain't Worth My Dime like ever. And like this is like the first time we ever played that song. So it's definitely interesting when you can't like rely on your strengths or like your songs that like do well and it puts you in a different headspace to play yeah, songs that we've never approached before. And so that was definitely awesome to see because I think going into like this Pierce the Veil tour, we definitely want to incorporate a lot of songs that we haven't like necessarily done and make it more of like a intimate experience in that way. So yeah, and definitely going back and singing songs that I did when I was a lot younger was fun with my voice to figure that out and to like, just get there on some of those notes. I think I did a great job on it, but it definitely took a lot of finesse.
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing as well as I always ask artists the same question when you do these kind of anniversary things because it must affect where you want to go next with things. You mentioned the tour there, but even in terms of the new music, even if it's things like, oh, I don't want to do that again, like you've worked something
Yeah.
out for that, like it might be a reaction against something, but it's clearly going to get in your head, right? Has anything happened like that for you? Have you discovered anything from, revisiting that album that's then affected how you're moving forward with new music?
Yeah, I mean, I think like going with a producer like Will Yip for this new album and being in a room together, which is something that we haven't done in a long time, like just sitting down in a room and everybody playing their instruments and coming up with songs is definitely feeling like, it feels like a nod to that second record. And I think that it's definitely, like going in and doing that tour has definitely brought out a lot of experiences with making that record and how like free we were at that time because I feel like we were grouped into like this category with these other bands with our first record and then we did this second album and it was like very different compared to what everybody else was doing and I feel like this new album with Will is kind of like a nod to that as well. Like there's a lot of bands in the scene that are doing a sound and they do it very well. And I think that we are kind of like going like, who are we as a band and who are we as a band now and what do we want to sound like? And the songs that we're creating with Will are fucking awesome. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. I'm excited.
Man, really exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
No, that's very, very cool. And speaking of that as well, something else I did just want to mention briefly on the side here. You've been doing some really interesting features lately, but one I particularly wanted to cite is obviously As It Is, a Rock Sound favorite. Great to see them back. Great to see them revisiting one of their debut album in this really interesting way with all these features. Tell me a little bit about your approach to that one and getting to work on that because yeah, it's one that I just felt is like such a really easy, obvious fit. Do you know what I mean? It makes a lot of sense for you to be pairing up with those guys, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we did a couple tours with those dudes. Patty's been like somebody that I've talked to for a long time, and I've always been an admirer of their music. I think that they're just stand-up people, and like, I just love that band. I think that they're just like easy to like, they're fun to be around. And I just, when I got the opportunity to be a part of it, I was just like, yes, it was like a no-brainer. And the song I got to feature on, I feel like was cool to like approach it in my way and kind of elevate the song. And I'm excited to hear the record in full and hear the other features on it as well.
Yeah, it's a great mix on there. Really, really nice mix. They've done very, very well bringing in the people they brought in there. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting mix when it finally comes out. Tour plans, you mentioned there, obviously, Pierce the Veil. I mean, let's mention that briefly because again, that's a night out, isn't it? That's a big night out. And again, it's one of
Yeah.
those that's another perfect tour fit because I imagine chances are, if you're a fan of Pierce the Veil, you're probably a fan of Sirens as well. Like it feels
Yeah.
like a really, really good fit, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I think that we really have the opportunity to do some cool stuff as far as production. We've always kind of like scaled back production, and I think that this time we're going to be able to do something that, will be a fun show. And we're playing venues that are like iconic, so that'll help. And then as far as like putting together a set list, I think we're going to just do something that, isn't the typical like go out there and play all the hit stuff. I want to like approach maybe doing some mashup stuff where we take some older songs that people have been requesting for a long time and throw them in the set and surprise people. So that's what we're
Oh,
looking to
that's
do.
exciting, man. That's gonna be a really, really interesting mix. And I take it headline. I mean, I know you won't tell me any timeline things here. It's all up for surprise and all that kind of stuff. But if the record's on the way, we're gonna be
Yeah,
thinking about some touring plans as well, some headliners.
think so. Yeah. We, yeah, I think like the main focus is just finishing this record. We've done like a couple writing trips and we've got like some really good stuff in the works and we're gonna just keep building it. Like this is like the first record that we're not rushing and we're not gonna go in and make in like 4 weeks. I think that it's important for album 8 to really give it its time and we're gonna make sure we have the best songs. And so that's
Hmm.
the main focus right now.
Yeah, and as much as I mentioned, earlier about like how That's Just to This is kind of, might affect your headspace a little bit. But similarly, let's bring it back to Haunted Mouths a little bit here because you must have discovered things about your songwriting process. You must have discovered new things working with all these different people and stuff. Is there anything from that you've then brought back into your process with the band? Anything you've discovered from this project that's made you think about the new Sirens record in a different way?
Yeah, I think like self-confidence has been like huge with that. Like just working with somebody like Aaron Marsh, who I feel is like a lyrical genius and just like the stuff that he does with his voice is like next level to me. To go in there with him and to work on this project and have him just, reassure me that everything that I was like writing and bringing to the table was awesome, gave me a lot of confidence going into the new Siren stuff and definitely gave me a new approach as far as like bringing lyrical content and just writing words first and thinking about melody second has been like huge. So I'm definitely leaning into like the lyrics on this one and making sure that all the words that I'm saying are important. So going back and rewriting things has been like a huge process on this new Sirens project. So making sure the words are right, I think.
Always a good
Yeah.
thing to have. Always a
Yeah.
good thing to have. And in terms of more Haunted Mouth, so obviously we know the release is coming here. People have heard the
Yep.
single by the time they're seeing this. But beyond that, how much is left in the locker? Did you have any songs that were kind of left on the side there before when you're putting together new releases? Is there anything in the background you might be banking for a little bit later?
For Haunted Mouth
For
stuff.
Haunted Mouths, yeah.
Oh, I definitely want to do like a cover song with Aaron. I want to like approach
Oh,
a
cool.
song that wouldn't typically be like thought of as something. I want to take something that is like really weird and obscure and like make it Haunted Mouth. So we're talking about doing something like that. Maybe something that's like heavy and then making it beautiful and pretty. I don't know, something in that way. So
Oh, interesting. Any hints? Any hints? Don't give too much away, but what kind of
No,
genre are
because
we
we haven't
talking?
like we haven't really narrowed it down yet.
Fair enough.
We're still like kicking around songs, but yeah, if anybody can do something like that, I think he would crush it. So that's what we want to do.